When I set off to ride the trail of Genghis Khan, I never imagined the adventure that lay before me. I couldn't ride before I began. This was a journey of 10,000 kilometres through the most extreme climate on Earth. I'd have to confront mountains, wolves, thieves, and the most tragic event of my life that very nearly ended my journey. But I was driven on by a dream, to live the life of the nomads who roam the unfenced land of the Eurasian steppe, and whose ancestors were the first to tame and ride the horse more than 5,000 years ago. The most famous nomad of all was Genghis Khan, who founded the largest empire in history. In the West, he's mainly remembered as a ruthless barbarian, but in Mongolia, he's celebrated as a national hero. So who are the nomads? And what can we learn from the lives they lead today? For me, the only way to find out was to ride from Mongolia to the edge of the steppe on the Danube in Hungary, learning to see the world through nomads' eyes. My journey, travelling alone and filming myself, has taken 20 months and covered 4,000 kilometres from Mongolia through Kazakhstan to the Buddhist Republic of Kalmykia in Russia. With my 3 horses and dog Tigan, I'm pressing on into southern Russia towards the Black Sea. Ahead lies the Ukraine, where I'm about to become embroiled in an age-old conflict between Tatars and Russians. Until now, I've been travelling through wild, uncultivated steppe, but this is where it comes to an end. A Kalmyk Buddhist took me to a holy tree to prepare me for the challenge ahead. My friend says I'll need a prayer for good luck, because in front of me lies cultivated land that's no country for a nomad. He says, beware. The most dangerous wolf is that which walks on 2 legs. Coming off the steppe, I'm forced to travel on roads. Poor Tigan, he's never even worn a collar in his life before. Everyone's wary of me, even the horses. When I first saw the green grass, I thought we were in heaven, but an angry farmer came rushing over and chased us off. We were trampling his precious wheat crop. Just thought I'd take the opportunity to say I feel like absolute crap. The shocking thing here in this district is that there's almost nowhere to graze the horses, because no one has horses, no one has animals. It's all cropped. I mean, the fields extend to the roads. This ploughed land, it gives me a feeling of complete devastation. For nomads, the earth's sacred and it shouldn't be disturbed. You look how I feel, Ogonyog. You look how I feel. I had a few drunk people come up to me and suggest that if I'm not careful, people are going to come in the night, hit me over the head, drown me in the river and steal my horses and sell them to the meat factory. Really charming. I think I've just decided that my pants probably aren't going to make it to Hungary. Pretty sad really, they've been with me for 2 years. I thought they were going to make it, but I'm afraid that people will just keep referring to me as a bomzh in Russian, which means basically a homeless bum. Just as it seemed I'd reached the end of my tether, a bunch of Cossacks turned up and offered me some vodka. Despite being sedentary farmers, these men still yearn for their past. They were once legendary horseback mercenaries who adapted to nomad custom. Stalin made it illegal to own horses. To dispossess a nomad, you take their horse, plough up their land, and they've lost everything. Nowadays, Cossacks are going through a revival of their culture. I'm invited to the blessing of a newly reopened well. It's a holy site for Cossacks. The well had been filled in and forgotten about under Soviet repression. They found the original site and redug it.
Очень рано было подвергнуто геноциду и репрессиям. И многое было уничтожено, а многое забыто. И поэтому, если мы хотим, чтобы казачество продолжалось, то нужно, чтобы... Сейчас иду, Виктор Алексеевич. Значит, нужно, чтобы молодежь наша знала традиции, знала нашу культуру.
Очень наш. Национальный обычай. Это называется шулия.
Я вчера ему говорила, рассказывала.
Это казахский принцип.
At first they said I'd have to drink a whole bottle, then jump over a fence to become a Cossack. But then they say, well, actually, you're more of a Cossack than us anyway. Приезжайте, будем кенгурские шашлыки. My next challenge is to cross the border into Crimea, and the last thing I need is a repeat of the 6-week nightmare I went through when I tried to get my horses from Kazakhstan into Russia. It was really as if I had a guardian angel when this man Lucy just appeared. As the leader of the local Cossacks, he said that he felt obliged to help a fellow rogue like myself. Before we get down to business though, he says, Tim, you need a wash.
Russian bunny. Russian bunny. Пойдем, Russian bunny.
Я в 11 постараюсь уже быть на месте.
I don't know how Ludi makes a living. Often he'd pull $100 out of his top pocket and tell me to go and buy some cigarettes or something. I thought for a crazy moment that he was going to fly me across the border. The best thing about these adventures is that you never know what's going to happen next. Lucy comes to an arrangement with his connections in the border police and sends me on my way saying that all of the Kuban Cossacks are behind me. Made it to the Azov Sea. First time on the horses. I've seen the sea, well, the real sea, since I began, almost 2 years ago. Salt water, horses don't really know what to make of it, even it's ticking. The nomads of old once crossed this strait in winter, travelling over the ice. Fortunately now there's a ferry, and it takes me 2 kilometres into Crimea. Through Russian and Ukrainian television, news of my journey has travelled ahead of me, and the local mayor welcomes me to the Crimea. We're back on track, all 4 of us. When I think back to the terrible winters when it was a struggle to find a single blade of grass, this is horse paradise. It's one of the best parts of the day for me, the evening, starting to relax, the horses are relaxing. Know how you feel. Just making camp out of this wonderful open country. I think we all feel in high spirits when we're out here. Oh, hi Dad, how's it going? Dad's a lecturer in experiential education. He set up a whole university course and he raised me to experience life through adventure. Despite that, of course, he was a bit worried when I set off on this journey. I couldn't even ride a horse when I started. But as I've grown on my travels, he's come to see me as a man. And in a funny way, we've become closer from afar. In Crimea, the Great Eurasian Steppe meets the Black Sea. With its open dry interior and fertile coast, it's long been a place where nomads and sedentary people have coexisted and clashed. With the summer heating up, it was time to head off in search of better pasture. From here, the once nomadic Crimean Tatars had always migrated up to the mountains, where it was cooler and there was lots of lush green pasture. For the last 2 years, my horses have been travelling barefoot. And Andre says that his hoofs are just incredibly good. They're incredibly hard and in very, very good condition. He says he could run another 10,000 miles, but the problem is we've got some mountains ahead. My horses are typical of the tough steppe breeds that have always lived in the harsh climate of the steppe and once carried Mongol warriors into war. To go up into the mountains alone with 3 tethered horses is far too dangerous. The only person I could find who was crazy or brave enough to travel with me was this guy, Seryoga. He's one of the toughest guys I've ever met. In fact, the night before we set off together, he drank about 5 bottles of vodka up until dawn. When I woke up, he said, "Tim, come on, let's go." He leapt bareback onto his bony old horse that would have been chafing his backside. We must have ridden about 8 hours that day, and he didn't complain once. Seryoga works as a forest ranger and knows this land better than anyone. The only thing he loves more than vodka is horses. The most precious thing in his life, I realise, is his mare. He loves more than anything to be on the road with her. After a long day in the mountains and trekking pretty hard, the horses are resting, and now I'm being given fresh strawberries, cream and sugar. Crimean specialty. Before heading up into the highest mountains, Seryoga decided to introduce me to the local prostitutes. This is them, a mother and daughter team. I'm not sure what his mother thought, sitting there drinking her cup of tea. Tigran was very interested though. Later that night, the young girl offered me a discount, but I decided against it.
Тихонько за руку меня взяла, взглянув лукавыми глазами карими, тихонько за руку меня взяла.
Unlike many people after the Soviet Union collapsed who deserted the steppe, Seryoga's decided to make his life out here. He can't bear the thought of living without horses, or the freedom of a fence-free life. In many ways I feel like he embodies the spirit of the nomadic people who once lived here. Seryoga's actually younger than me, but he looks a lot older. The average life expectancy for Russian men is only 59. But the way he's going, I'm not sure he's going to make it. It's great to have Seryoga here. Just to pack usually takes me 3.5 hours. We're looking for old nomad paths, but they're all overgrown, and when we can't find them, Seryoga just makes his own. Well, the horses are out there somewhere. I'm just hoping that they're not going to run away because the clouds are coming in, the storm's right around us. We can't even see them anymore. Poor Seryoga said that, well, if we haven't got any cigarettes or beer, then there's nothing I can do but sleep. So he rolled over and slept for a whole day. It feels like the rain has washed away the sweat of the last few days and cleansed the air. It's even had a purifying effect on Seryoga. He seems to be in higher spirits than when we started out. In ancient times, this is where nomads would have always lived in the summer. The cliffs suddenly drop away 1,000 metres to the Black Sea. Ticket, get back! Seryoga's been with me for 3 weeks now, and we've forged a special bond. Unfortunately though, his mare's gone lame, and he's going to have to walk home. I'm really going to miss him. I descended to Bakhchisarai, an ancient crossroad of the Silk Route and capital of the Crimean Khanate that was once a far-flung outpost of the Mongol Empire. At the Khan's palace I'm given a warm welcome. For the past 7 centuries, Bakhchisarai has been the cultural centre for Crimean Tatars. The Khans, who were blood descendants of Genghis, ruled here until 1783, when Crimea was annexed by Russia. This is where the Khan would have entertained his guests. Tiggin's making the most of it, and after bathing in the palace fountain, he stretches out like the Khan himself. In the light of day, I learn that this is a deeply troubled place. I meet up with Tatars who are part of a civil action to reclaim their land. The Tatars were once nomads, whose life revolved around the horse. Although they're sedentary these days, they're still culturally nomadic at heart. In 1944, Stalin was afraid the Crimean Tatars would side with the Nazis, so he deported them en masse to Central Asia and Siberia. Many died, and those who survived weren't allowed to return until the late 1980s. But their land and homes had been taken by Russians. Despite promises of compensation, few returning Tatars were given a place to live, and they've now taken matters into their own hands. There are thousands of tents like these across Crimea.
Здесь собираемся уже до последнего, уже все. Пока мы эту землю не возьмем, мы отсюда не уходим.
At some point the signal will be given, and across the country thousands of Tatars will begin building their homes, and no one will be able to stop them. In Bakhchisarai I met Islam. He's the director of Tatar television and wants to show me where the frontline battle is being waged to re-establish the rights of his people. Islam carries a gun on his belt because of death threats from Russians. As Tatars returned in the 1990s, the Russians built a market on their most historic site, regarded by UNESCO as World Heritage. There are 12 ancient mausoleums here dating back centuries. They house the graves of Tatar Khans and spiritual leaders who brought Islam to Crimea. As a local historian explains to me, the Tatars have been lobbying for the market to be removed so that the site can become part of a national heritage park. Although the courts ruled that the market had been illegally built and ordered the market's director to disband it, he's refused to comply. During the interview, we're approached by an aggressive Russian. It's a reminder of how raw the tension is. I have to be really careful here.
Чего ты хочешь? А ты что? Идите, пожалуйста. Я даю интервью, что тебе нужно? Давай, иди, не мешай нам. Ну ладно.
The Tatars are picketing the market to shut it down, as can be seen on this banner, which reads, "Take away the market that's built on our bones." It's clear to me that this has become much more than a battle about a market. Many Russians still don't acknowledge the Crimean Tatars' claim to their homeland.
Уйди, баран, уйди отсюда! Что вы делаете, люди?
Suddenly, Russian thugs steam forward and begin bashing the Tatars. The special riot police are brought in, and as I film, I'm feeling really exposed. Being seen as a Tatar sympathiser, I often get very dark stares. The next day, Russians, intent on breaking the will of the Tatars, arrive in their hundreds. Cossacks, believing that it's their historical duty to protect Russia from Tatars, are also here in uniform and looking for a fight. I'm astonished that the very mention of the word Mongol or Tatar still makes Russian blood boil. When the adrenaline settled down, I couldn't help but see that this conflict echoes an ancient pattern of history. Ever since the domestication of the horse, nomads have been in conflict with sedentary society. They are two vastly different ways of living and viewing the world. I set off from Mongolia more than 2 years ago, leaving my excess baggage behind as a sedentary being, so that I could become a nomad and return to the Western world looking through the nomad's eyes. It's time for me to get out of Crimea, and I head north into mainland Ukraine. It's been going 4 days straight now across the steppe here in northern Crimea. The heat's really hot, so I've only been riding at night time and early in the morning. I've been finishing at about 11 o'clock each morning and just relaxing, letting the horses graze, find a tree and try to keep out of the heat. It's quite obvious why Genghis Khan and others never fought during the summer, because it's just too hard on the horses. And 4 days without a wash. This is something that nomads of the Crimea didn't used to have the privilege of. Soviet irrigation. This water comes all the way from the Dnieper River and it's shipped in here to the steppe via these great concrete canals. I'm off the Crimean Peninsula now, in mainland Ukraine. Ukrainians have been sedentary people for thousands of years. It's the first time I've been in such an ancient sedentary society, and on horseback I'm seen as a novelty.
Mongolia?
Yeah.
Ну и куда зараз?
Сейчас в Венгрию, до Будапешта. Немножко остались. They have no comprehension of where I come from. And it makes me realise that, like in old times, their concept of the world is less developed than nomads, who once travelled the breadth of Eurasia. My horses are invited in for the night, but at first they're too scared to enter. They've never been in a stable before. To have animals kind of separated one from another is probably one of the cruelest things that you can do to a horse. It seems to me that both my dog, myself and all my horses are really feeling it here. I think we're all just feeling a little bit depressed and really desperate to get back out there. Just in the last few days the temperature's really started to drop. There's real crispness in the air and the horses are moving a lot faster, a lot more easily. I feel like the caravan's really starting to steam ahead and I feel excited and the landscape has become empty. This is just the time when most settled people start moving into their homes for winter. And this is of course the time when the Mongols were preparing for war, for taking more land. Via my satellite phone, some devastating news suddenly arrived. My father's been involved in a car accident in Australia. I just got the worst news of my life. Dad's been killed in a car accident. I can't believe it. I don't know what to do. I've just got to get home to be with my family.